Assalamu alaikum students. Today I am going to tell you the story of David Copperfield, written by Charles Dickens. This story is based on the real life of Charles Dickens. From this story, we come to know that how many ups and downs he faced in his real life. Charles Dickens was born in a poor clerk's family, and he is a great novelist and had little schooling as he spent his childhood in misery. Let's have a look on his life. The story begins with the birth of David Copperfield. His father had died before 6 months of his birth. So he was called very unfortunate child because he was born on the day of Friday. And it was considered very unlucky day that time. And he had only his mother, Clara, who was very pretty. His servant Peggotty looked after him a lot. She served David a lot. He visited Yarmouth with Peggotty and met Ham and Emily, who were nephew and niece of Peggotty. He also met Mr. Peggotty, who was Peggotty's brother. So there he enjoyed a lot, and he saw sea and their old boat house, which was fascinating for David. When he returned, he was shocked to see that his mother Clara had married with an unkind person whose name is Mr. Murdstone. He beat him a lot and he didn't tolerate David in the house. He sent him to Salem House, where David was treated very badly. But Mr. Mall, who was the teacher, was a very kind and lenient, and he loved David. But Mr. Creakle was the owner of the school, and he also beat him a lot. Meanwhile, he knew that his mother Clara had died. Then Mr. Murdstone sent him to his old wine trade company, which name is Salem House. So he didn't want to do some kind of job there because it was a child labor, and David was compelled to do by his stepfather. And he didn't get any love in his whole life, and because he did not see his father at all, so his mother was compelled to obey his husband. That's why David was sent to Salem House. But he escaped from there and reached Dover to his aunt's house, because his aunt, Miss Betsy Trotwood, lived in Dover, so he moved towards Dover. His aunt admitted him to a good school, that is Canterbury, for getting education, and introduced David to her lawyer, whose name was Mr. Wickfield. But the owner of Canterbury School was also very kind, whose name was Dr. Strong, and he taught David with love. Mr. Wickfield was a very nice person. So David, after joining school, David started to live with Mr. Wickfield and met his daughter Agnes, who was very supportive with David, and she also helped David in his studies. Mr. Wickfield had an assistant whose name is Uriah Heep. Uriah Heep played a negative role in the whole play, in the whole novel. So he is called the villain of this play. He dodged many innocent people, and he dodged Mr. Wickfield by snatching his all property. So when Mr. Wickfield's all property was snatched by Uriah Heep, he became very ill and sick. So his eyes were always red, and he was looking afraid. He was under the control of Uriah Heep. So Agnes was very sad, and she always remained very upset due to her father. Before taking decision about his future, he visited Yarmouth with Steerforth. Where they heard the news of Ham and Emily's wedding. Steerforth fell in love with Emily. After some time, David came to know that Emily has run away with Steerforth, who was the old best friend of Salem House School, but she returned back now, because Steerforth betrayed her, and he took her to Italy, and finally she escaped from the prison and slavery of Steerforth. And now she met Mr. Peggotty again. David started working as a lawyer with Mr. Spenlow and fell in love with his daughter Dora. They both got married with each other, but Dora became weak after marriage and died soon. She said to Agnes to marry David. David went abroad for some time, but when he realized that Agnes, how much Agnes loved him, he returned back and married with Agnes. Now Agnes made his life contented and peaceful because she was very sensible. So finally, the story ends with the happy life of David and Agnes. So, in the end, I would say that David is called a hero in true sense because he encounters many hardships and problems with great spirit.